Listen here, you ghetto trash! This ain't your neighborhood courthouse where you people make demands. Tank Morrison's voice booms through the marble halls, his massive frame towering over the small black woman in her cheap second-hand suit. Behind him, a wall of white police officers sneer down at her like she's garbage. "Officer Morrison," Sarah's voice cuts sharp and clear. "My brother deserved justice." "Your brother?" Tank's laugh cuts like a blade. "That drug-dealing piece of trash got exactly what his kind deserves." He steps closer, his spit hitting her face as he speaks. "Maybe if welfare queens like your mama raised kids instead of criminals, we wouldn't have to clean up your messes." Tank deliberately knocks her legal papers to the floor, then grinds his boot into a photo of Marcus's dead body. "Know your place, girl. This is a white man's courtroom." The uniformed cops behind him chuckle and nod approvingly. Sarah stands alone, defiant, unbroken. What Tank doesn't know is about to destroy him completely. The Metropolitan Courthouse stands like a fortress of marble and glass in downtown's heart. News vans line the street like metal predators, their satellite dishes reaching toward storm clouds gathering overhead. Today's hearing will decide the fate of the Marcus Williams Police Reform Act, legislation that could change everything. Inside the ornate courtroom, century-old oak paneling witnesses a modern battle. The gallery splits cleanly down the middle like a wedding gone wrong. On one side, police uniforms create a blue wall of solidarity. On the other hand, community activists clutch handmade signs reading "Justice for Marcus" and "Stop Police Violence." Sarah Williams sits quietly in the front row, her modest navy suit a stark contrast to the expensive legal teams surrounding her. At 32, she carries herself with quiet dignity that masks inner steel forged in tragedy. Her colleagues in Parliament know her as the soft-spoken freshman representative who worked 3 jobs through law school. What they don't know could fill a martial arts trophy case. 3 years ago, Sarah discovered her hidden strength in the most painful way possible. After Marcus died, grief nearly destroyed her. The official report called it suicide, but Sarah knew better. Her 19-year-old brother had defensive wounds the coroner couldn't explain. Security cameras mysteriously malfunctioned during his final hours. The supervising officer filed a report so clean it squeaked. That officer was Bradley "Tank" Morrison. Sarah channeled her rage into something productive. Every morning at 5 a.m., she trained at Master Carter's dojo, learning Krav Maga with religious devotion. Every evening, she studied law books and police procedures until her eyes burned. She built herself into a weapon disguised as a grieving sister. Tank Morrison commands the opposite side of the courtroom like a general reviewing troops. 15 years of police work carved his face into permanent skepticism. At 42, he stands 6'4" with shoulders that strain his dress uniform. Commendations cover his chest like armor plating, each one representing a case closed, a problem solved, a threat neutralized. To Tank, today's hearing represents an invasion. Community activists and bleeding-heart politicians want to tear down everything he's built. They don't understand street reality. They've never faced a knife-wielding drug dealer or talked a jumper off a bridge. They see police brutality where Tank sees necessary force. Marcus Williams was a necessary force. The kid was dealing drugs, had connections to suppliers who paid Tank handsomely to look the other way. When Marcus threatened to expose the operation, Tank made a choice. One dead criminal versus dozens of good cops feeding their families. The math was simple. Tank doesn't know that Sarah Williams is more than Marcus's grieving sister. He sees her as just another community organizer with a law degree and naive dreams of justice. Her plain clothes and quiet demeanor reinforce his assumptions. Politicians wear expensive suits and demand attention. This woman fades into the background like wallpaper. Judge Patricia Williams, no relation to Sarah, presides with 20 years of hard-earned authority. She lost her own nephew to police violence 5 years ago, a fact carefully hidden from Tank's research team. Her black robes carry the weight of personal understanding that makes her dangerous to Tank's cause. The media fills every available seat, their cameras hungry for drama. Conservative outlets want footage of naive activists being schooled by experienced officers. Liberal networks hope for evidence of police brutality they can broadcast for weeks. None of them realize they're about to witness something unprecedented. Sarah's mentor, retired Judge Martinez, watches from the back row via video call on Sarah's phone, propped discreetly against her briefcase. His weathered face shows concern mixed with pride. He trained Sarah in courtroom strategy the same way Master Carter trained her in combat, with patience, precision, and absolute commitment to justice. Tank's police union representative Dave Fletcher whispers last-minute strategy changes. The union spent serious money fighting this legislation. Too much rides on today's outcome to leave anything to chance. Fletcher doesn't notice Sarah's presence any more than Tank does. She's background noise in their symphony of power. The afternoon light streaming through stained glass windows paints the courtroom in amber and shadow. In a few hours, this sacred space will witness an explosion that changes everything. Two forces shaped by the same tragedy are about to collide with devastating consequences. But first, Tank Morrison needs to learn exactly who he's been underestimating. The first blow comes during afternoon recess. Tank Morrison holds court in the marble lobby, surrounded by reporters like a king addressing subjects. His voice booms off the high ceiling, every word calculated to demolish Sarah's credibility. "This little girl thinks she can lecture us about police work?" Tank's laugh carries across the crowded space. "I've been protecting this city since before she could spell justice. Some community activists want to teach real cops how to do their jobs?" Sarah stands 30 feet away, organizing documents at a side table. Tank's words hit like physical blows, but she keeps her face neutral. Around her, reporters scribble notes and cameras roll. Tank notices her listening and raises his voice. "Maybe if some families raised law-abiding citizens instead of criminals, we wouldn't need these witch hunts from bleeding heart troublemakers." The words hang like poison gas. Sarah's hands freeze on her papers. Tank just mocked Marcus's death without knowing she's his sister. The cruelty is breathtaking. "Officer Morrison?" Sarah's voice cuts through crowd noise, steady despite fury building in her chest. "I look forward to reviewing the evidence together, including the Marcus Williams case." Tank's confident smile doesn't waver. To him, she's just another activist who reads news articles and thinks she understands police work. "Sure thing, sweetheart. Always happy to educate concerned citizens." The crowd of reporters senses tension and edges closer. Tank notices their attention and decides to put on a show. He approaches Sarah's table with theatrical casualness, his massive frame casting shadows across her workspace. "Maybe stick to paperwork you can handle," Tank says, then deliberately bumps her table. Sarah's carefully organized documents scatter across the marble floor like autumn leaves. Marcus's autopsy photos slide under nearby benches. "Clumsy me," Tank smirks, stepping on a crime scene photograph. The image shows Marcus's bruised body, and Tank's boot heel grinds across her brother's face. Sarah's hands tremble as she retrieves the damaged photo. Those watching closely see her jaw tighten, the only outward sign of volcanic rage building inside. Tank has no idea he just declared war on the wrong person. Tank Morrison's confidence grows with each passing hour. To him, Sarah Williams represents everything wrong with modern America. Soft activists who never faced real danger trying to regulate warriors who risk their lives daily. He decides to make her the poster child for naive idealism. During the next break, Tank grants an impromptu interview to Channel 7 News right outside the courtroom doors. His voice carries clearly to where Sarah sits reviewing testimony transcripts. "Look, I feel for grieving families, I really do," Tank says, his tone dripping with false sympathy. "But emotion can't drive policy. This community organizer never walked a beat, never faced a knife-wielding suspect, never made split-second decisions that saved lives. It's easy to criticize from ivory towers." The reporter nods sympathetically. "What's your response to allegations about the Marcus Williams case?" Tank's expression hardens. "Marcus Williams was a drug dealer who made violent choices, period. His sister here wants to canonize a criminal because she can't accept reality. We see this pattern constantly, families refusing to acknowledge their loved one's behavior." Sarah's pen snaps in her grip. Tank just called Marcus a violent criminal on live television, spreading lies about her dead brother to justify murder. The reporter doesn't know Tank is talking about the woman sitting 20 feet away. "Some people," Tank continues, "use tragedy to push political agendas. They organize protests, file lawsuits, create legislation based on emotion rather than facts. It's a dangerous precedent when activists can second-guess police decisions from their comfortable offices." The interview continues for 12 minutes. Tank systematically destroys Marcus's reputation while painting Sarah as a delusional sister who can't handle the truth. He describes Marcus as a habitual offender with violent tendencies, and Sarah as a community college graduate playing lawyer. When the cameras stop rolling, Tank notices Sarah's intense stare. Instead of feeling intimidated, he approaches her table with swagger. "Enjoying the show, counselor?" Tank's voice carries just enough volume for nearby lawyers to hear. "Sometimes truth hurts, but that's reality in police work." Sarah looks up from her broken pen. "Officer Morrison, were you personally involved in Marcus Williams' arrest and detention?" "I was the supervising officer, yes. Standard procedure." Tank's chest puffs with pride. "I handled everything by the book. Your brother's choices led to his consequences." "Interesting," Sarah says quietly. "The official report lists you as present during his final hours." Tank's confidence doesn't waver. This naive activist thinks she found something suspicious, but Tank covered his tracks perfectly. "Death investigations require thorough documentation. I filed comprehensive reports." "I'm sure you did." Sarah's voice carries undertones Tank can't interpret. "Very thorough. The afternoon session brings new humiliations. When Sarah attempts to present evidence about police misconduct patterns, Tank stage whispers to his union representative loud enough for microphones to catch. "Here we go with the conspiracy theories." When Sarah questions the coroner's timeline in Marcus's case, Tank shakes his head theatrically and mutters, "Amateur hour." Judge Williams pounds her gavel. "Officer Morrison, please maintain courtroom decorum." "Sorry, Your Honor," Tank replies with exaggerated contrition. Sometimes it's hard to listen to fantasy presented as fact. The gallery of police officers chuckles approvingly. Tank feeds off their energy like a performer working a friendly crowd. Each disruption makes Sarah appear weak and Tank appear authoritative. During cross-examination, Tank's arrogance reaches new heights. When Sarah's attorney asks about security camera malfunctions during Marcus's detention, Tank responds with condescending patience. "Technology fails sometimes. It's unfortunate, but not suspicious. We can't prevent every equipment problem." "How convenient," the attorney responds. Tank's mask slips slightly. "Are you suggesting something improper occurred? Because I resent the implication. I've served this city with honor for 15 years. Sarah watches from her seat, taking mental notes. Tank reveals crucial information when angry. His defensiveness confirms her suspicions about the camera sabotage. During the final break, Tank's behavior escalates to pure cruelty. He approaches Sarah's table where she's reviewing Marcus's medical examiner photos, images of her brother's battered body. "Still playing detective?" Tank looms over her, his shadow falling across the photographs. "Some cases don't have happy endings, sweetheart. Your brother chose his path." Sarah doesn't respond, carefully organizing the evidence of Tank's handiwork. Marcus's bruised face stares up from the photos, silent testimony to Tank's violence. "You know what I see here?" Tank picks up one of the autopsy photos without permission. "I see a young man who made bad decisions and faced consequences. Nothing more, nothing less." The photo shows defensive wounds on Marcus's hands, evidence of a struggle Tank claimed never happened. Sarah's breathing remains controlled, but her hands clench into fists beneath the table. Tank notices her reaction and pushes harder. "Face reality. Your brother wasn't some innocent angel. He was dealing drugs, associating with dangerous people, and threatening police operations. What did you expect would happen?" The words confirm Sarah's worst suspicions. Tank just admitted Marcus threatened police operations. Corruption Sarah suspected but couldn't prove. Tank's arrogance is making him sloppy. "Maybe," Tank continues, "instead of wasting taxpayer money on witch hunts, you should ask yourself where your family went wrong. How did you fail Marcus so completely that he ended up dead in a cell?" Sarah looks up slowly, her dark eyes meeting Tank's blue ones. For the first time, he sees something that makes him pause, not grief or anger, but calculation. The look of a predator sizing up prey. "Officer Morrison," Sarah says quietly, "I think you've said enough." Tank mistakes her restraint for weakness. "Have I? Because from where I stand, you're just another activist who can't handle the truth. Your brother was a criminal who died because criminals make dangerous choices." He leans closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. and little activists who play with real police work might learn the same lesson. Sarah's expression doesn't change, but everyone nearby feels the temperature drop. Tank just threatened her, and the courthouse cameras caught every word. He has no idea the trap he's walking into. Sarah Williams excuses herself from the courtroom as Tank basks in applause from his supporters. The marble hallway echoes with her footsteps as she walks toward the women's restroom, her composure finally cracking. Inside the empty bathroom, Sarah grips the porcelain sink and stares at her reflection. Tank's words replay in her mind like poison. Your brother was a criminal who died because criminals make dangerous choices. Her phone buzzes. Judge Martinez's weathered face appears on the video call, concern etched in every line. Sarah, I watched the live stream. He's trying to provoke you into losing control. He threatened me, Judge, on camera. Sarah's voice trembles with controlled fury. And he just admitted Marcus threatened police operations. He's confessing without realizing it. Martinez nods slowly. Tank's arrogance is his weakness. He thinks you're just a grieving sister with a law degree. He has no idea who he's really facing. Sarah takes a deep breath, centering herself using techniques Master Carter taught her. He doesn't know I'm an MP. When I reveal that, he'll either back down or explode, Martinez finishes. Based on what I've seen, Tank Morrison doesn't back down from anyone. Sarah adjusts her posture in the mirror. For the first time today, observers would notice something different, the way she holds her shoulders, the steadiness in her stance. The grieving sister is disappearing, replaced by something far more dangerous. Time to show Tank Morrison exactly who he's been underestimating. The afternoon sun casts long shadows across the courtroom as Judge Williams calls for final statements. Tank Morrison approaches the podium with the swagger of a man who's never lost a fight. Behind him, dozens of uniformed officers sit like a blue wall of solidarity. Your Honor, Tank begins, his voice carrying the authority of 15 years in uniform. We've heard a lot of emotional appeals today. Tragic stories designed to tug heartstrings rather than address facts. He turns slightly, making sure the cameras capture his profile. But policy can't be driven by the grief of community activists who've never walked in our shoes. Sarah sits in the front row, her hands folded calmly in her lap. To everyone watching, she appears to be just another concerned citizen listening to testimony. Tank's eyes sweep past her dismissively. The Marcus Williams case represents everything wrong with this misguided legislation, Tank continues, his confidence growing with each word. A young man made criminal choices, faced consequences, and now his family wants to blame the police for their own failures. Murmurs ripple through the gallery. Some nod in agreement, others shift uncomfortably. Tank feeds off the mixed reaction like a politician working a crowd. I supervised Marcus Williams' detention personally. Everything was handled by protocol. The investigation was thorough, professional, and conclusive. Suicide by hanging, a tragic end to a criminal life. Sarah's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. Tank just lied under oath about Marcus's death, claiming suicide when he knows he committed murder. Tank's voice rises with righteous indignation. But instead of accepting the painful truth, we have community organizers playing detective. People with no law enforcement training, no understanding of street realities, trying to second-guess split-second decisions made by trained professionals. He pauses dramatically, letting his words sink in. Your Honor, I've dedicated my life to protecting this city. I've faced knife-wielding suspects, talked jumpers off bridges, cleaned up after drug dealers like Marcus Williams. I won't apologize for doing my job. The police officers behind him nod approvingly. Tank basks in their support, his chest swelling with pride. This legislation isn't about reform, it's about revenge. It's about activists who can't handle reality trying to criminalize police work. Well, I have news for them. Tank's voice hardens as he stares directly at Sarah. Real police work isn't pretty. It's not politically correct. Sometimes criminals die because criminals make dangerous choices. That's not police brutality. That's justice. Sarah stands slowly, her movement deliberate and controlled. The courtroom falls silent as she walks toward the podium. Tank watches her approach with amusement, thinking she's about to make some emotional plea about her community concerns. Your Honor, Sarah's voice cuts through the silence like a blade. I'd like to respond to Officer Morrison's statements. Judge Williams nods. You may approach. Sarah stops 3 feet from Tank, looking up at his towering frame. He smirks down at her, confident in his physical and institutional superiority. "Officer Morrison," Sarah says clearly, her voice carrying to every corner of the courtroom, "you've spent considerable time today dismissing community activists and family members seeking justice." Tank's smirk widens. "Just stating facts, ma'am." "I appreciate your dedication to facts," Sarah continues, her tone remaining perfectly professional. "So let me share one with you." The courtroom holds its breath. Something in Sarah's tone suggests this moment matters more than anyone realizes. Sarah looks directly into Tank's eyes. "I am Member of Parliament Sarah Williams, Chairwoman of the Police Oversight Committee, and Marcus Williams was my brother." The words hit the courtroom like a physical explosion. Tank's face drains of color as the full weight of his situation crashes down on him. He spent hours publicly insulting, threatening, and humiliating a sitting member of parliament on live television. The police officers behind him look horrified. Union Representative Dave Fletcher's mouth falls open. Reporters frantically scribble notes as cameras capture Tank's shock. Tank's voice cracks like a teenager's. "You're an MP?" "Yes," Sarah replies calmly. "And for the record, I graduated summa cum laude from Harvard Law School, not community college. I've walked plenty of beats during my community organizing days, and Marcus Williams was murdered in your custody." Tank's shock transforms into rage. His humiliation in front of his peers, combined with the realization that he's been outmaneuvered by someone he considered beneath him, ignites something primal and dangerous. "I don't care if you're the Queen of England!" Tank's voice booms across the courtroom. "Your drug-dealing brother got exactly what criminals deserve." The gallery erupts. Judge Williams pounds her gavel repeatedly. "Order! Order in my courtroom!" But the Tank has lost all control. 3 years of successfully covering up Marcus's murder, combined with the shock of discovering Sarah's true identity, breaks something fundamental in his psyche. "You think your fancy title protects you?" Tank advances on Sarah, his massive frame towering over her small figure. "You're still just another activist bitch who—" Tank's hand moves in a vicious backhand aimed at Sarah's face. The slap echoes through the silent courtroom like a gunshot, the sound captured perfectly by dozens of recording devices. Sarah's head snaps to the side from the impact, but she doesn't fall. Instead, she absorbs the blow and moves with deadly precision honed by 3 years of grief-fueled training. Time slows to syrup as Sarah sidesteps Tank's follow-up grab. Her right hand shoots out in a perfect palm strike to his solar plexus, driving every molecule of air from his lungs. As Tank doubles over, gasping, Sarah's elbow comes down in a controlled strike to the back of his neck. Tank Morrison, all 6'4" and 240 pounds of him, drops like a felled tree. His head strikes the marble floor with a sickening crack that echoes through the stunned courtroom. The entire sequence takes exactly 3.2 seconds. Sarah stands over Tank's unconscious form, her breathing controlled and steady. Blood trickles from her split lip where his slap connected, but her expression remains calm. "Self-defense," she states clearly for the record, her voice carrying to every microphone in the room. "And I am a member of Parliament." The courtroom explodes into chaos. Police officers surge forward, stopped by bailiffs. Reporters shout questions while cameras capture everything. Judge Williams pounds her gavel uselessly as Tank's unconscious form sprawls across the courthouse floor. Within minutes, cell phone footage floods social media. #MPF Fights Back begins trending as the world watches a member of parliament knock out the cop who killed her brother. Tank Morrison finally learned who he was really dealing with. The courthouse steps erupt into chaos as news crews broadcast Sarah's takedown of Tank Morrison to the world. Within an hour, #MPF Fights Back trends globally while Tank recovers in the hospital with a concussion and wounded pride. Police Union President Dave Fletcher calls an emergency press conference that evening. Standing before a wall of blue uniforms, his face red with indignation, he delivers a scathing condemnation. "Today we witnessed an unconscionable abuse of power," Fletcher declares. "A sitting member of parliament used her martial arts training to assault a decorated police officer in a court of law. This wasn't self-defense. This was a calculated attack by someone who concealed her identity and training to entrap Officer Morrison." The assembled officers nod grimly as Fletcher continues his carefully crafted narrative. Sarah Williams deliberately hid her MP status, allowing Officer Morrison to treat her as he would any other activist. She manipulated the situation to provoke a response, then used lethal force against an unsuspecting officer. Conservative media outlets seize the story immediately. Headlines scream across television screens, MP's secret weapon. Did Sarah Williams plan the attack? And when politicians go rogue, the Sarah Williams scandal. By morning, Tank appears on 3 major news programs, sporting a neck brace and speaking in carefully modulated tones of injured dignity. I had no idea she was an MP, Tank tells sympathetic hosts. She presented herself as a community activist. If I'd known her true position, I would never have engaged so directly. She used her concealed identity to manipulate me into a confrontation. Tank's performance is masterful. He portrays himself as a working-class cop, blindsided by a deceptive politician. I've spent 15 years protecting this community. I don't deserve to be ambushed by someone hiding behind false pretenses. The narrative gains traction across social media. #TankWasTrapped competes with #MP Fights Back as public opinion fractures along predictable lines. Conservative voices condemn Sarah's abuse of political privilege, while progressive supporters celebrate her courage. District Attorney Patricia Hawkins, facing massive pressure from police unions and conservative voters, announces formal charges against Sarah within 48 hours. No one is above the law, especially elected officials, Hawkins declares at her own press conference. Using concealed martial arts training to assault a police officer represents an abuse of power that cannot be tolerated in a civilized society. The charges are severe. Aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, specifically citing Sarah's hands as weapons due to her martial arts expertise. If convicted, she faces up to 10 years in prison and automatic removal from Parliament. Sarah's legal team fragments under pressure. Senior advisors urge a plea deal that would involve resigning from Parliament and accepting probation. Cut your losses, they counsel. This story isn't going away, but Sarah refuses to back down. I defended myself against my brother's killer, she tells her remaining supporters. I won't apologize for that, and I won't let Tank Morrison escape justice again. Tank's confidence soars as the legal machinery grinds forward. He gives increasingly bold interviews, painting himself as the victim of political persecution. Sarah Williams used her position to deceive and attack me, Tank tells a sympathetic podcast host. She's not some brave hero. She's a politician who abused her power for personal revenge. What Tank doesn't realize is that his growing media presence attracts unwanted attention. FBI domestic terrorism investigators, already monitoring police violence cases, take notice when a sitting member of Parliament gets charged with assaulting an officer. Agent Maria Santos begins reviewing the Marcus Williams case with fresh eyes, wondering why a grieving sister would risk everything to attack one specific cop. Her investigation uncovers discrepancies Tank thought he'd buried forever. The enhanced courthouse audio footage proves devastating for Tank's narrative. FBI technicians isolate his whispered threats to Sarah. Little activists who play with real police work might learn the same lesson. Even worse, they capture his admission about Marcus. Your brother threatened police operations. What did you expect would happen? Sarah's defense team, led by civil rights attorney Michael Carter, uses Tank's own words against him. Officer Morrison admitted Marcus Williams threatened to expose police corruption, Carter argues in pretrial motions. This suggests Marcus wasn't killed during a routine arrest. He was murdered to protect criminal activity. Tank's lawyers scramble to explain their client's statements. Officer Morrison was speaking hypothetically about criminal behavior patterns, they claim. His words were taken out of context by hostile investigators. But the damage spreads beyond Tank's credibility. Federal prosecutors announced they're reopening the Marcus Williams case based on new evidence suggesting federal civil rights violations. Tank's union support begins wavering as the federal investigation expands. Other officers worry about their own exposure if Tank's corruption network unravels. Union President Fletcher privately advises Tank to consider a plea deal. The feds are serious this time, Fletcher warns. Your assault case is bringing attention we can't control. Tank refuses to back down. I've covered my tracks perfectly. Sarah Williams attacked me, period. The feds will find nothing because there's nothing to find. His arrogance blinds him to the growing evidence mountain. Federal investigators trace Tank's financial records, finding unexplained deposits totaling $50,000 in the months before Marcus's death. Phone records show communications with known drug dealers Marcus was preparing to expose. Sarah watches the investigation unfold from her Parliament office, suspended from committee duties pending trial. Public opinion remains split, but she finds strength in knowing the truth is finally emerging. Her mentor, Judge Martinez, visits weekly, offering support and strategic advice. Tank's pride will be his downfall, Martinez predicts. He can't resist defending himself publicly, and every interview gives prosecutors more ammunition. The breakthrough comes when federal agents interview Marcus's former cellmate, Rico Vasquez, now in protective custody. Rico reveals that Marcus had documented Tank's corruption network extensively, hiding evidence in a location only Sarah would recognize. Marcus said if anything happened to him, his sister would know where to look, Rico tells investigators. He was scared of that big cop and said the guy had killed people before. Armed with Rico's testimony, FBI agents search Marcus's childhood bedroom in Sarah's apartment. Hidden inside their father's old Bible, they find Marcus's insurance policy. Photographs of Tank accepting bribes, recorded conversations, and a detailed journal documenting the corruption network. Marcus's final entry chills everyone who reads it. Tank knows I'm going to expose him. If something happens to me, it wasn't suicide. Tell Sarah I'm sorry I got involved with these people. Tank's carefully constructed narrative collapses as federal prosecutors prepare murder charges. His assault case against Sarah becomes secondary to his own survival. But Tank Morrison has one more card to play, and he's desperate enough to use it. The federal courthouse buzzes with international media as Tank Morrison's murder trial begins. Sarah's assault case has been postponed pending the outcome of federal charges, transforming her from defendant to key witness in Tank's prosecution. Tank enters the courtroom flanked by expensive lawyers, his neck brace removed but his confidence shattered. Federal prosecutors have built an overwhelming case. Financial records, witness testimony, and Marcus's hidden evidence all point to premeditated murder. Lead prosecutor Janet Rodriguez addresses the packed courtroom with devastating precision. Marcus Williams died because he threatened to expose a corruption network led by Officer Morrison. This wasn't police work, it was assassination. Tank's defense attorney, Harold Brennan, attempts damage control. My client is a decorated officer who made split-second decisions in dangerous situations. Marcus Williams was a violent drug dealer who attacked Officer Morrison during routine detention, but Tank's own arrogance undermines his defense. Despite Brennan's advice to remain silent, Tank insists on testifying. He can't resist the opportunity to publicly justify his actions and attack Sarah's credibility. Your Honor, Tank declares as he takes the stand, I've served this community with honor for 15 years. Marcus Williams was the criminal who chose violence over compliance. Prosecutor Rodriguez begins her cross-examination with surgical precision. Officer Morrison, you were personally present during Marcus Williams's final hours, correct? Yes, as a supervising officer. Standard procedure. How many other inmates died in your custody during your 15-year career? Tank's lawyer objects, but the judge allows the question. The Tank shifts uncomfortably. Death in custody is rare but not unprecedented. Criminals sometimes make desperate choices. Rodriguez produces a thick file. Actually, 7 inmates died during the detentions you supervised. That's statistically impossible unless you're either extraordinarily unlucky or something else is happening. The Tank's composure cracks slightly. I work in dangerous situations. Sometimes things go wrong. Let's focus on Marcus Williams specifically. You testified that security cameras malfunctioned during his detention. How convenient was that timing? Technology fails. It's unfortunate but not suspicious. Rodriguez plays enhanced audio from the courthouse confrontation. Tank's voice fills the courtroom. Your brother threatened police operations. What did you expect would happen? Tank's face goes pale as his own words condemn him. I was speaking hypothetically about criminal behavior patterns. Were you? Because this sounds like specific knowledge of Marcus Williams's activities. What operations did he threaten, Officer Morrison? Tank realizes his mistake too late. Admitting knowledge of specific operations implicates him in corruption. Denying it makes his previous statements look like confessions. I don't recall specific details. Tank mumbles. Rodriguez produces Marcus's hidden journal, entered as evidence despite Tank's lawyer's objections. Marcus Williams documented your corruption network extensively. He recorded conversations, photographed bribe exchanges, and identified your criminal associates. Tank's breathing becomes labored as his carefully buried secrets surface in federal court. Those could be fabricated. Dead men can't verify authenticity. Actually, Marcus hid physical evidence that corroborates his documentation. FBI forensics confirmed these photographs show you accepting $50,000 from drug dealer Carlos Mendoza. The courtroom gasps as blown-up photographs flash on screens. Tank accepting cash bundles, Tank meeting with known criminals, Tank coordinating with corrupt officers. Marcus had documented everything. Tank explodes from the witness stand, his 15 years of careful control disintegrating. That little punk was going to destroy everything. He was going to snitch about operations that kept this city safe. The outburst stuns everyone. Tank just confessed to murder on live television, broadcast to millions watching the trial. Brennan frantically motions for his client to stop talking, but Tank has completely lost control. "You want the truth?" Tank screams at the prosecutor. "Marcus Williams was a dead man the moment he threatened my network. I built something important, keeping real criminals off the streets while cleaning up their money. One dead snitch versus hundreds of lives saved." Judge Thompson pounds his gavel repeatedly. "Mr. Morrison, you need to—" "I protected this city for 15 years. Tank continues his manic confession. "I made hard choices that weak people couldn't understand. Sarah Williams set me up because she couldn't handle the reality about her criminal brother." Brennan physically tries to restrain his client, but Tank shoves him away. "Marcus got what traitors get, and that bitch MP manipulated me into attacking her so she could play victim." The courtroom erupts as Tank's complete psychological breakdown plays out on international television. His confession to murdering Marcus, combined with his continued threats against Sarah, destroys any remaining sympathy. Rodriguez watches calmly as Tank destroys himself. "Officer Morrison, are you confessing to murdering Marcus Williams?" Tank's wild eyes focus on her with manic intensity. "I'm confessing to protecting my city from criminals and politicians who don't understand necessary work. Did you strangle Marcus Williams with your bare hands?" "I neutralized a threat to law enforcement operations." The admission hangs in the air like a death sentence. Tank has just confessed to first-degree murder before millions of witnesses. His lawyers slump in defeat while prosecutors exchange satisfied glances. Judge Thompson calls for recess as bailiffs approach Tank, who continues ranting about justified killings and political conspiracies. His breakdown is complete in public, broadcast live to a horrified nation. Sarah watches from the gallery, finally hearing Tank admit to murdering Marcus. 3 years of investigation, grief, and martial arts training led to this moment. Her brother's killer just confessed in open court. During recess, Tank's remaining supporters abandon him. Police union officials distance themselves from his unstable behavior, while conservative media outlets quietly retract their support. FBI agent Santos interviews Sarah during the break. "Miss Williams, we're prepared to recommend dropping all charges against you. Officer Morrison's confession makes your assault case irrelevant." Sarah nods, but her expression remains grim. Justice for Marcus isn't just about Tank going to prison. It's about preventing this from happening to other families. When court resumes, Tank sits defeated and medicated, his lawyers having convinced him to remain silent, but the damage is irreversible. His televised confession will replay for years, becoming a textbook example of criminal arrogance destroying itself. Rodriguez presents closing arguments to a jury that's already decided. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard the defendant confess to murder in his own words. Marcus Williams died because he threatened to expose corruption. Officer Morrison killed him to protect criminal profits. Tank's defense offers no closing argument. How do you defend someone who confessed on live television? The jury deliberates for 37 minutes before returning with guilty verdicts on all counts: first-degree murder, civil rights violations, conspiracy, and racketeering. Tank Morrison, who spent 15 years believing himself untouchable, will spend the rest of his life in federal prison. The courthouse steps shimmer in golden afternoon light as Sarah Williams emerges to thunderous applause. After Tank's conviction on all charges, federal prosecutors officially dropped her assault case, declaring her actions justified self-defense against a confessed murderer. The crowd of supporters has grown exponentially since Tank's televised breakdown. What started as a few dozen community activists now spans thousands, their signs reading "Justice for Marcus," "MP Fights Back," and "Sarah's our hero." International news crews broadcast live as Sarah approaches the microphone cluster. 3 years ago, my brother Marcus was murdered in police custody, Sarah begins, her voice carrying across the packed plaza. Today, his killer received life in prison without parole. The crowd erupts in cheers, but Sarah raises her hand for silence. This isn't just about Tank Morrison. It's about a system that protected him for 15 years while he terrorized our communities. Behind her, Marcus's photograph displays on a massive screen, young, smiling, innocent. The image transforms him from Tank's violent criminal narrative back into what he truly was, a teenager who died for threatening to expose corruption. Marcus Williams was 19 years old when Tank Morrison strangled him to death, Sarah continues, her voice steady despite tears streaming down her face. He died because he chose courage over cowardice, justice over profit. Federal Judge Thompson's sentencing echoed in every news broadcast that morning. Bradley Morrison, you have been found guilty of first-degree murder, civil rights violations, and racketeering. You will serve life imprisonment without possibility of parole. Tank had sat silent during sentencing, his arrogance finally broken. The man who terrorized Sarah for hours in that courtroom now looked like a frightened child facing consequences for the first time in his adult life. Sarah's political transformation proves equally dramatic. Her willingness to physically defend herself while maintaining moral authority reshapes her effectiveness in Parliament. Colleagues who once dismissed her as a quiet freshman now seek her guidance on justice reform. The Marcus Williams Police Reform Act passed Parliament with unanimous support just 6 weeks after Tank's conviction. Sarah's enhanced credibility, combined with Tank's public confession, makes opposition politically impossible. The legislation mandates federal oversight of police departments with suspicious custody death patterns, requires independent investigations of all detention fatalities, and establishes whistleblower protections for officers exposing corruption. Marcus died fighting corruption, Sarah tells the crowd. Today, his death saves other families from experiencing our pain. Tank's conviction triggers federal investigations in 12 other cities where his corruption network operated. 47 additional officers faced charges ranging from bribery to accessory to murder. The ripple effect spread far beyond one courthouse in one city. Sarah's office displays letters from families across the nation. Mothers thanking her for showing them that fighting back is possible. Fathers inspired to seek justice for their own murdered children. Siblings finding strength in her example. The viral video of Sarah's 3.2-second takedown of Tank accumulates over 200 million views across platforms. Martial arts schools report massive enrollment increases, particularly among women and marginalized communities. #DefendYourself becomes a global movement. Tank's former police union quietly establishes a victim compensation fund using his seized assets. The $2.3 million recovered from his corruption network provides counseling and legal support for families affected by police violence. Sarah visits Marcus's grave every Sunday, bringing updates on the legislation bearing his name. 47 cops arrested this month because of you, she whispers to his headstone. You're still fighting corruption, baby brother. The media circus gradually fades, but Sarah's transformation endures. She speaks at law enforcement academies about ethical policing, addresses international human rights conferences about systematic reform, and mentors young politicians facing intimidation. Her memoir, Fighting Back When Justice Requires Courage, becomes an international bestseller. Proceeds fund self-defense training for low-income communities and legal aid for families battling police misconduct. Tank's former supporters distance themselves completely. Police departments nationwide implement de-escalation training partially inspired by avoiding another Tank Morrison incident. The viral courthouse video becomes required viewing in police academies as an example of how prejudice and arrogance destroy careers. Sarah finds personal happiness too. She remarries a fellow parliamentarian who shares her passion for justice reform. They adopt two foster children whose biological parents died in police custody, giving them the stable home Marcus never had. On the third anniversary of Tank's conviction, Sarah addresses the National Police Reform Conference. "Justice isn't just about punishing wrongdoers," she concludes her keynote speech. "It's about transforming systems so future Marcus Williams can live full lives." The standing ovation lasts 7 minutes. In the audience, dozens of families touched by police violence find hope in Sarah's example. Marcus Williams's death, through his sister's courage, becomes a catalyst for protecting thousands of future victims. Tank Morrison destroyed himself trying to silence one grieving sister. Instead, he created a movement that will outlive them all. 2 years after Tank Morrison began serving life imprisonment, Sarah Williams stands in her Parliament office, surrounded by evidence of transformation. The walls display framed photographs from police reform graduations, letters from grateful families, and a prominent portrait of Marcus smiling in his high school cap and gown. The Marcus Williams Police Reform Act has exceeded every expectation. Federal oversight prevented 23 documented custody deaths in its first 18 months. 156 officers faced accountability measures they would have escaped under the old system. Sarah's desk holds thank you letters that arrive daily. Maria Santos from Phoenix writes, "Your courage inspired me to report corruption in my local department. 3 officers were arrested last month." James Carter from Seattle adds, "My son is alive because officers now wear body cameras during all detentions." The global impact spreads beyond American borders. The Sarah Williams model influences police reform in 12 countries. Her combination of political authority and personal courage creates a template for effective advocacy that politicians worldwide study. Tank Morrison remains in ADX Florence, the federal supermax prison. Prison reports describe him as a broken man who spends days in solitary confinement, all arrogance stripped away by life imprisonment reality. His former corruption network faces ongoing prosecutions. Federal investigations uncovered evidence linking Tank's operation to 17 murders spanning 8 years. The man who called Marcus a violent criminal was actually a criminal organization leader. Sarah's martial arts journey continues with Master Carter, who now teaches self-defense classes funded by her Victim Advocacy Foundation. Enrollment exploded after the viral courthouse video, with particular interest from women in politics and activism. The statistics paint a remarkable transformation picture. Self-defense class enrollment increased 340% among women in public service. Police complaint resolution improved 89% in departments under federal oversight. Social media engagement with police reform content rose 450%. Sarah's political evolution continues as she chairs the International Police Accountability Commission. Her office coordinates reform efforts across continents, sharing successful strategies and supporting advocates facing intimidation. Her personal life flourished alongside her public mission. Marriage to fellow MP David Kim brought stability and partnership. Their adopted children, Emma and Carlos, both lost parents to police violence, finding healing in a family that understands trauma and triumph. Marcus's Memorial Foundation operates community centers in 38 cities, providing free legal aid, counseling services, and self-defense training. Over 50,000 people received assistance in the program's first 2 years. Sarah visits Marcus's grave monthly, bringing updates on lives saved by legislation bearing his name. 12 more families got justice this month because you were brave enough to document Tank's crimes, she whispers to his headstone. The viral courthouse video remains the most watched police accountability footage in internet history. Frame-by-frame analysis is taught in law schools, martial arts academies, and conflict resolution programs as a masterclass in proportional self-defense. Sarah's story proves that standing up to bullies works, whether facing corrupt cops or systemic injustice. Her example shows that real power comes from courage, not titles, and sometimes peaceful people must be prepared to fight. Justice for Marcus became justice for everyone, and it started with one sister who refused to let her brother's killer walk free. Sarah Williams proved that sometimes the only way to honor the dead is to fight like hell for the living. This story shows us that power isn't about position, it's about courage. Sarah was a member of Parliament, but she was also a sister who refused to be intimidated by her brother's killer. Have you ever faced someone who thought they could silence you? Have you ever stood up to a bully who underestimated your strength? Share your story in the comments below. Your courage might inspire the next person to fight back. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Stories of justice and transformation need to be heard by everyone who's ever felt powerless against institutional corruption. Remember, you don't need a black belt to stand up for what's right, but having one doesn't hurt. Most importantly, never let anyone convince you that seeking justice makes you the problem. What would you have done in Sarah's position? Let us know in the comments and share this with someone who needs to remember that bullies can be defeated, no matter how big they are. The Marcus Williams Act continues saving lives today. Justice for one became justice for all.
The story you heard today wasn't cleaned up. It was told exactly as it happened. At Black Voices Uncut, we believe that's the only way truth can live. If you felt something, hit like, comment, and your reaction, and subscribe. Every week, we bring you voices that refuse to be silenced.